Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
Hey.
Hey.
I have to confess.
Okay.
So we talk about all the dental drama we have to manage, but I don't think I'm ever very forthcoming with my part in stirring the pot. And I stirred the pot the other day. And but there's a point in this. I stirred the pot, and in the end, this is basically a talk about treatment acceptance, which continues to always be anytime. Since I've started dentistry, even before I own my own practice, treatment acceptance is a challenge.
It is.
And so I wanted to talk through that because I, again, think I can't be the only one, but it's also when I stirred my own pot and didn't even recognize that's what I was doing. And then the minute I was like, oh gosh, what did I just do? So this was the other day, and I don't know what or why, but I was looking through the schedule, maybe just to kind of see like what was coming up or when our next IV date was or whatever. Flip to the next IV day that's like in 2 weeks, and there's 2 kids on there. And I got really annoyed because I was like, why? It's summer. Shouldn't we be busier? All the people that were waiting for school to get out, like, shouldn't they be scheduled on that day? And without thinking, I immediately thought in my mind, what is my treatment coordinator doing? She must be behind. So shame on me for not giving grace and assuming the best. But in my mind, I think the reason I thought that too was because she'd been out the day before.
Right.
No fault of her own. We had crazy weather in Dallas, storms and trees falling on people's homes, whatever. Anyway, so she had to deal with something like that. So it was a legit, like, she was out. But the day before that was the Memorial Day holiday. So in my mind, it's like, we haven't been here much. We must be behind.
Right.
Which, again, is the wrong knee-jerk reaction to have, but that's the reaction I had. So then I made it worse by, we have Weave, like, text messaging through the office, instant messaging, whatever. And I messaged, and I was like, hey, why don't you go sit in this seat so you're undisturbed and your teammates up there can, it's not super busy right now. They can cover whatever you're doing so that you can be dedicated and focused in calling patients and figuring out like who's ready to schedule and do the unscheduled treatment follow-up. So she replied back and she was like, no, I'm quite comfortable in my seat. I'm set up. I'm whatever. And of course that just, I was like, well, I don't care what seat you're sitting in. The point is, can you make these calls and fill up my schedule? Which then, I didn't even tell you this part. Then I turned to the associate and I'm like, because he's the one who we kind of tasked him with going, hey, can you make sure that they're staying on top of these calls and like whatever. And so I was like, well, what are you doing? Are you keeping up with this? Like, are you slacking now? Like, so I'm just like,
if it's not her fault, it's gotta be yours.
It's your fault. Like, somebody here is to blame for this, right? And so he just kind of looks at me and he's like, no, I looked at it. She's been making her calls and she's up to date on that. And I still had worked myself up into this foul mood. And so I was like, I was like, do I trust you or not? And so he was like, well, she is coming up on where by the end of this week, the next set of calls need to be made. And so I did let her know, like, don't forget you have those calls. And I was like, well, like right now she's sitting and doing nothing. Like, we're slow right now. Why wait till Friday? Why are we not making those calls on Tuesday? And maybe, you're kind of laid back too. So maybe you're fine with that, but I'm not fine with that. If you want a slow IV day, that's up to you, but not on my day. I do not want to come here for a slow day. So maybe, like, you're really good at a lot of the other things, but maybe this isn't in your wheelhouse because you're too laid back. Like, I just went off on him. It was so terrible. And he is such a sweetheart. Like, he just let me, I think he was just like, I was probably the Snoopy teacher, right? There she goes again. Like, he didn't get fazed by it. He just kind of looked at me like, you okay over there? And I was just like, well, then she comes back and she's like, hey, I just wanted to know if y'all think I'm missing something, because as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, I'm meeting the calls, I'm doing what I need to be doing, and So, of course, then I was like, and he had just firmed that she was doing all of it. And so I was like, oh, well, and then we have the other front person that I had asked her as well. And she's like, no, she's really good about making her calls and she's whatever. I'm like, well, damn it. That was 1,000% me. Just got that shitstorm of brewing for no reason. Like 1,000% me. But it did lead to good conversation for you and you had some good feedback on treatment acceptance and stuff like that. Because when I was talking to her teammate up there, I had just been talking to her a few days before about something, and she had made the comment that our treatment coordinator is really good about making these parents feel comfortable and building rapport and making them understand the work and all of that. She's like, she's really good at that. And I'm like, well, you say she's really good at that, but she's not closing cases. So I don't know how good she is with that. And the comment back was, well, it's also this economy and inflation. And I was like, I mean, I'm sure that has something to do with it. However, that's always has been and always will be the standard of money is a problem, which boils back down to then, do they value the treatment?
Right.
And so I think I just started going, okay, well, if she's making these calls, y'all are saying she's on top of everything. And yeah, like on a surface level, she's doing what she needs to be doing. Like she's connecting with the patient. She's explaining treatment. They understand the treatment. She's doing all of that. But then where's the misstep of how can I help her be more successful?
Yeah.
What other tools do I have, or what else should I be doing? And I even said, like, do I need to be doing the talks myself more? Do I need, like, what is it? Because I know money's always going to be the thing for anybody. Yeah. But at the end of the day, there's something else. And so I was like, maybe we need to go back and listen to the calls she's making and see if we can gain some pearls from there. And then I knew, but again, since I was already like, I'm already on the drama train, may as well finish it out here and crash in a blaze of glory, not just a little pff. But I was like, you know who always closes cases when she used to do it? And it was our manager.
Yeah.
And our manager is very intense. And so a lot of times they don't like her because she's quick to point out like where they're not being efficient or so I was like, do I keep my mouth shut? And of course I couldn't, right? Blaze of glory. And I was like, she could always close cases. And of course this coworker looks at me like, oh. And she was like, well, I would like to know how or why. Like, how was she successful? And I'm like, because it's always been about money, but she is able. And I was like, that's a good question. Like, I'm going to see, like, going back and maybe, and this was a great comment. She was like, well, can we listen to her make some of the follow-up calls? So maybe we can glean some pearls. I was like, that's brilliant. Yeah. Let's do both. Like, pull some calls that the current treatment coordinator has made, and then we'll have this one make some calls and see if we can see a pattern in what's being done differently. All I know is she can close cases. Yeah. Anytime we've asked her over the years, anytime. Yeah. So even during the pandemic, she was closing cases. So I know there's more to it than just the finances. So then I was like, my gut tells me our current treatment coordinator, I don't think she would spend the money if it was her kid. I think she feels bad asking for money. Yeah. I think she feels uncomfortable.
It's a financial barrier within her.
Yeah. And maybe she would spend the money on her kid. I don't know why. But I think to her, I think she sees that it's an uncomfortable thing asking for money. Yeah. But I do think she's assuming it's the money. Right. And so I'm kind of going, but well, how could the other person always close something? It's not like people were walking around. I mean, maybe they were that year PPP. I don't know. Maybe there was a lot of free money in the air. I didn't get any of it, but well, I guess I did get PPP. Whatever. Anyway. Point being, I think you had a lot of great nuggets to share with us about how do we dig deeper into this trench.
And really, a lot of offices may not necessarily assume that they have a treatment coordinator. So let's say it's a smaller team and they've just got their one administrative person at the front, their RDA, their hygienist, and it's like, oh, I don't have a treatment coordinator. Yeah, you do. Somebody is coordinating the care of that patient and trying to get them scheduled and trying to get the schedule filled. And so to me, there's really consistent qualities with good treatment coordinators. And I think the consistent qualities that I see, it kind of starts with this insatiable desire to close the case. Like, they're just not satisfied when somebody doesn't move forward with treatment, whether that's elective things like ortho, or whether it's caries, like full on, we've got to get this, this kid or this patient taken care of. They're just not satisfied. Like, it drives them crazy that
but
patient,
they didn't win that parent over.
They did not win. So they have this drive to, it's not about just filling the schedule. I think that can be part of it, but it's like this personal satisfaction. They get fulfillment out of winning the deal. Now, I think all good treatment coordinators know that they're winning the deal for the benefit of the patient. I have met I can think of one unethical treatment coordinator. So that sounds bad to say, like, oh, the best treatment coordinators are the ones that they want to win the deal. But they are winning the deal on behalf of the patient.
Well, and that's where my manager, and that's why every time she's super intense, and I'm like, but watch what she's intense about. If she was intense just to pick on people, I would have said, get the heck out of here, right? Yeah. But she's intense when she sees things that affect where we could have been better with patient care. And she's like, why can't we do better?
Yeah.
And so how can I not admire that quality? Yeah, sometimes she can be a little intense in her delivery, but at the end of the day, it boils down to she cares about this patient, she cares about her teammates, she cares about this practice, and she cares about me. Mm-hmm. And so in this case, like for her, when she's seeing these images are coming up when we take intraoral photos of these bombed out teeth, and she's like, if that was my niece, if that was my friend, if that was somebody, like, I know what's going to happen to that kid, and I don't want that for that kid.
Right.
So I think for her, she is uber passionate about going, that kid deserves better. Mm-hmm. And what is wrong with you that you're not giving that kid better? Mm-hmm. And she obviously doesn't say that, but the way she's able to phrase things, she's able to help the parent see that they're being idiotic by not completing the care.
Yeah. Well, and almost the assumption that she walks into those conversations with is, why would you not?
Yeah.
Like, why would you not? So I kind of equate it, you've got teams that, I won't go into football land because that's touchy, but you've got athletic teams out there that they just win. Just all the time, they win. Not all the time, but they're so accustomed to winning that when there is a loss, it hurts, and it hurts badly because that is not
the standard,
their norm. And then you've got teams that lose, and the one or two games that they might win out of the season, they're ecstatic because they won a game. That's exactly what happens with good and mediocre treatment coordinators. The good ones, they walk in fully expecting that patient is going to move forward with that care. Why would they not? That's insane to think about. Why would they not? Then you've got the mediocre ones that it's like, they might move forward, but there's a pretty good chance that, finances are going to be an issue. They walk in with a lose mindset. And I don't think that they intend to walk in with a lose mindset. It's just their status quo. Nobody's moving forward with treatment, so just another good old day at the job. Nobody's signing up.
Well, and to be fair to our one, because that's exactly the boat she's in. But I think it's for her, she doesn't want to, she thinks she would be ruffling feathers by saying, why would you not do this for your kid?
Yeah.
And I can see that, and I can totally appreciate that she is not inflaming and incensing parents, but there's a way to do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming and hoping she's going to be open to, some tweaking of her.
Well, and it takes a natural curiosity to. So I was sitting with a new treatment coordinator in another office. Just kind of moved into this role due to a shakeup on the team, and so it's interesting because when I sat down with her, because she was already doing some of the treatment coordinating tasks, but didn't fully own the role. And so when I sat with her, I'm like, hey, the doctor and I have talked. We really want you to really fully take on that treatment coordinator hat. And I was like, you tell me, what are some of the treatment coordinating tasks that you're currently doing? And so she said, I'm the one that goes in and talks with patients about, it's an adult general practice, but I'm the one that goes in and talk with patients about their treatment care. I present the finances. I get them scheduled. I collect the money. And, I also follow up on unscheduled treatment. I'm like, great. And I asked her, I said, do you feel like that's, the full role of a treatment coordinator? And she was like, yeah, I feel like that's everything. And I was like, I would assume so too, but you're wrong. There's actually a whole lot more that goes into it. And that's what I want to get you to. When I say I want you to assume the whole treatment coordinator role, I'm going to tell you what I want you to get to. Because what you just said to me are all the nuts and bolts of what most people think a treatment coordinator is. So you sit down with, and again, I'm not talking about your person when I say, so when I keep referring to a mediocre treatment coordinator, I want to set the record straight. I am not talking about your treatment coordinator. In general, when I meet mediocre treatment coordinators, they have that mindset. Oh, well, I present the finances, I present the plan, I get the patient scheduled, I collect the money, and I follow up on unscheduled treatment. I am a treatment coordinator. No, because anybody can be assigned those tasks. To me, a treatment coordinator goes far beyond that, and they go, okay, let me look back and let me spot trends from the past couple of months. Do I know my trends? Can I say my trends off the top of my head? Some of the best treatment coordinators I sit down with, one of my favorites, she's an ortho treatment coordinator, love her, and she's obsessed with closing these cases. And I travel out to them a few times a year, and the second I walk into her office, she's like, Bethany, let me show you. She pulls out her own created spreadsheet. She's like, look at all these patients that I had. These are all the patients that started. These are all the patients that weren't ready to start yet. These are the 3 that didn't sign up that were ready to start. And I've been thinking about them. And on this one, blah, blah, blah. And she can tell me all these little nuances that she picked up on in the appointment that may have persuaded them not to move forward with treatment. And on this family, now this family is interesting because of this, and this. And she has done nothing but obsess about those 3 families, ready to talk to me about it. That's a good treatment coordinator because, first of all, she can look back and she can clearly state her trends. She's been tracking it, not because anybody asked her to, but because she wanted to know her success rate. But then the cases that she didn't win, she can't stop thinking about them. And she's trying to figure out all the little nuances that may have come in and had a negative impact that persuaded the patient not to move forward. But then also, so she's looking back a lot, which is what I would say a lot of treatment coordinators don't do. They may look back and go, I need to follow up on these cases. But they're not looking back to go, what is my success rate? Why was I not successful with these cases?
So what they're doing is they're going, it was the money, and they stop.
They assume that.
Even going in, I think because they print the estimate before they go in, and I think they're going, oh gosh, no parent's going to sign up because this estimate is for $5,800. So they're not going to sign up. And I think you're absolutely right. I think they're going in with the mindset of going, they're not going to sign up for this.
Yeah.
And that is probably the biggest thing, at least in our treatment coordinator case, I would pinpoint that's probably what I was saying. Like, she's just automatically assuming that they're not going to sign up for it.
Well, and then when they don't, there's no digging deeper into why, because the assumption is finances.
Yeah.
So we don't learn anything from those rejections.
Which is then, because then when I was telling you, when I was talking to my, the manager, hygienist, whatever, who, when I'm like, she's the one who's always successful with this. And so I told her about the conversation. I was like, hey, we're going to, at some point here soon, we're going to have you do some of these follow-up calls so we can try to see what you do different, whatnot. And she was just like, she's like, okay. And I think she went back and went to some of the more recent patients just to see what the notes were. The treatment coordinator leaves her own thing, spoke to mom and dad about this, gave them the treatment folder, gave estimate, mom to discuss with dad, she'll call us back. So it's a fine note, like it documents what we did, I guess. Well, it was funny because manager is like, that is a crappy note. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, that gives me nothing to go on. I'm like, well, what did you want her to say? Like, she's like, I like to so it's saying exactly what you just said. I like to dig more and ask, so that way I have something to go back to. And I'm like, but I think she thinks she does have something to go back to, because she's going to go back and say, Mom, do you remember we talked about this? You said you were going to talk to Dad. So she thinks she's left herself a breadcrumb. And the effective one is going, that is not a breadcrumb. And I'm like, honestly, I don't know either then. Can you, obviously she wasn't in the conversation, so she can't really necessarily, but maybe going back to some of the ones that she did that she remembers, to go back. Or if it was a family that she knew she interacted with, she remembers showing Mom some of the photos or something Mom said in the operatory before she handed it off to the treatment coordinator. What would you have put in that note? Now that when you are making that follow-up call, it's a more impactful, meaningful, direct, and that comes from the what else. I think you said it too. It's always finances and what else.
What
And I think that's the trap our treatment coordinator has fallen in, is going, oh, it's just finances. And to be fair to her, like, I think her whole career otherwise has been, I think, or at least her most recent one before our office was a Medicaid office. So she didn't have this on her plate at all. Her challenge in those offices was talking about the safety of, IV, going over the need of why a crown versus a filling, and she was able to be effective with all of that. She was never faced with the money part. And now she's really struggling with the money part.
Well, and it's become potentially her own mental barrier.
Yeah. That's what I believe.
Her own mental barrier to dive deeper and figure out. So it's almost like, yes, finances. Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's more. It is, I would venture to say 98% of the time, it's more than just finances. There is something else that we've missed, some other button that we didn't tap on that we needed to tap on. I always hesitate on this part of the conversation, because I feel like it's the part of the conversation that gets dentistry into trouble. Right? So the few bad apples that are out there that exploit and take advantage and do the wrong thing for patients, they're really good at getting patients to move forward. And I hate that, because it's like the worst ones are good at it. But it's almost like I'm not doing any dentist any favor by not talking about how you have to be effective at treatment coordinating. It's not just because some people have exploited it in a negative way doesn't mean that there's not tools and ways of thinking that we should avoid. Like, we've got to be able to look at it as influencing. We have to influence somebody to move from point A to point Z. And there's a lot of steps in between, and we have to really get into the human psyche to figure that out. It should drive us crazy that somebody didn't move forward, because what did we miss in diagnosing that person and being able to tweak our communication in just the right way to hit the right buttons to get them to move forward?
Well, and that, to me, I guess that's kind of the thing. Like, do we stand behind what we're saying?
Right.
So I think that's where, you're right, a few bad apples can exploit and twist it and convince somebody of something. And we want to be careful not to be the one that is seen as the shady one who's doing all of that. But if you take that aside and you go, do I really believe you need that stainless steel crown? If I can't say I truly believe that, then yeah, it needs to stop right there. But clearly, if I've said we need it, we need it. And I'm trying to take care of my patient.
Yeah.
And so if a parent's just going, oh, well, that's just too much money. Okay, but are you telling me we're not going to help that black hole?
Yeah.
Like that's...
There's a problem with that we should be bothered by that.
Yeah. And say, well, what have I not explained well enough to you to go that black hole is not normal?
Yeah.
That's not okay. So I get that it costs. My car costs money. My gas costs money. That's why we work. We have money. Tell me why you don't agree with this. And so I think that's where, and in our office, it is a lot of, well, back home we didn't do that. And we all turned out fine. So we've got to, there's educating to be done there. But I don't think she's digging deep enough. That's my personal guess. Maybe she is. Like, I need to listen to these phone calls and whatever. But I think my guess is she's printing it, looking at the amount and going, there's no way they're going to sign up for this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think whether it's your official treatment coordinator or if you don't feel like you've got somebody on the team that advocates, as the doctor, we've really got to be driven by this desire to get people to move forward. And again, I think you're exactly right. Ethics comes first. Make sure that you're doing right by the patient. But ultimately, at the end of the day, as clinicians, whether that's doctors or anybody in the office for that matter, we need to be advocating for that patient to get healthy. Whether that's a kid, whether that's an adult, if they've got something in their mouth that's making them unhealthy, or take it even a step further, if they've got something about their mouth that makes them lack confidence, that makes them not want to smile, that impacts them socially, that's important as well. And I know we can oftentimes minimize that, but we should know the impact of a good smile and how that makes somebody feel. It's our job to advocate for that patient. And if we're not thinking deeply about how to advocate for them or what buttons to push, I think about personal trainers all the time. And they have to have this ability to motivate their person that they're working with to get healthier. When do they kind of crank down and yell at them or push them harder and say, you gotta do better? When are they soft? When are they compassionate? How do they manipulate all of that to then keep that person engaged for a long period of time and getting stronger and getting healthier? What we do is equally, if not more, important, and we should be putting the same time and attention into how can I package this information and make it palatable enough that we're able to then move that patient forward.
Well, and I guess I think a lot of people are going to have the comment of, but I don't want to seem pushy.
Right.
And I get that because I know I've been in that boat for a long. It took me a while to get there, but then I finally, and I have to go back and think like what finally pushed me there. But I was like, am I doing you a favor by not telling you how detrimental this could be for your kid? So for example, we had one I was telling you about the other day that a nonverbal, combative, obese, autistic patient, and he's got a severely rotted tooth that, and I want to say he's like 8 years old and it's tooth number K. So that's going to be there for a while. And it's even more broken down than it was 3 months ago. And I think when I look back, my associate saw him and said, hey, y'all need to go, because after the pandemic, we don't have hospital privileges anymore. We gave those up. But we do have a colleague that we send our cases to take him to Children's, which is where this kid is going to be most appropriately served. And so anyway, they never followed through with that. So I was in this appointment and I said something like, I really am highly concerned because that is a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. Mm. And I know nobody wants to go to Children's. Nobody wants to pay for that and do all of that. But it's something that at least we have control over. It's predictable. We know he's going to go this day. The tooth's going to come out. I don't want it to be he wakes up swollen and now we're scrambling to go to Children's, and where he could have been in and out in a 3-hour window with a planned procedure. Now you're going to spend 2 days at Children's. Yeah. And so I said, it's just really concerning me that y'all haven't gone and taken care of that. And before I could finish my sentence, the dad said, well, he's autistic. He's not going to let them start an IV. And I was like, what? No, that's exactly who can start an IV. That's children. This is all of their cases are like this. This is a no-brainer for them. They see about, 100 of these in a week. Yeah. So it was something that simple that when we assumed he knew that Children's would be able to take care of his kiddo.
Right.
And it's not often that we've got somebody who didn't understand that. Or even if they didn't understand that, they would still follow through thinking that we know where to send them.
Right.
But in this dad's mind, who knows what his experiences have been if he's tried to get something else done somewhere else and maybe ended up at a surgery center that wasn't a children's center. I don't know. But in his mind, it was, but they've not been able to start an IV on him before. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but that's exactly why you don't want to have his face blow up. And then now he's struggling.
Yes.
And I said, no, they are fully equipped. That's why we sent you there. Oh, I'm like, that's not going to be a problem at all.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it was money.
Yeah.
You don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe that's going to be the next hurdle. But that wasn't even his primary hurdle. It was, they're not going to be able to treat my kid. Mm-hmm. And so if we hadn't kind of dug deeper with that. If I just left it as, you didn't take care of this, I really need you to take care of it, and walked out of the room. But I kind of like paused, and then his comment was,
yeah,
this is
just by allowing the space for it, by applying a little bit of that pressure and that questioning, like, why are we not moving forward with this? And then allowing the pause there for the dad to say something, and what he comes back with was easily correctable. He had misinformation, or he had a misunderstanding about his child's care. Something as simple as that. But it's like, we don't often take the time to, first of all, care. I do think that's a part of the problem. We manage so many patients that it's like, oh, another one, shoot, I hate that he's not getting taken care of. So did we pause long enough to go, I am concerned about this kid. I really do care. I don't want him to have a situation where he's in a lot of pain and hospitalized over this. And then number two, am I willing to have that uncomfortable conversation with dad where I'm pushing back a little bit to go, why? What is the holdup on this tooth? So that dad can then say his main concern, and we're able to correct that information. So that's just caring and digging deeper.
So can you tell us about, like, if you don't have like a newer office that maybe just has a couple of employees, and the doctor, I think you were telling me about.
Yes. So I would say on a smaller team where you don't technically have a treatment coordinator, there's going to be things that you have to segment off. But to me, the actual presentation of the treatment, that onus is going to ultimately fall to the dentist. So the dentist should be the one digging deeper and trying to figure out what's going on. I recently sat with a client of mine who was thinking on treatment coordination. He was, every time we get together, we're looking back. Let's look at the cases that have been going. How are your IV days coming together? Let's look at the patients that haven't moved forward. Let's think through what's going on with them. I wonder what it is. We start just by looking at real basic things like, are there any trends that we see among these 5 cases that didn't move forward? Are they all over a certain dollar amount? Or do they all involve crowns? Is there a certain ethnicity there that we need to think about? Are there language barriers that maybe the parents didn't fully understand what you were talking about?
The age group you were saying.
Yeah.
Like, is it an older parent? Are they all older parents? Are they all
Yes.
younger parents? Like what?
Yes. So that's the great thing about looking back, is that you can actually look collectively at your unscheduled cases, and you can start to draw deductions. Now, sometimes there's nothing combining them. I would say that's rare. Most of the time there's this thread of something running through each one of them, and it to me spotlights a deficiency that we have in our treatment presentation, that maybe if it's all over a certain dollar amount, then we're really not great at talking about financial options, or we tend to avoid that conversation, or the presenter or the coordinator himself or herself is uncomfortable with that dollar amount. So it could be something as simple as that. What's interesting is, in this one particular office that I was working with, as we dug further, we actually landed on the fact that we felt like these parents were more cosmetically focused. And my client does stainless steel crowns. And so as we started to look at some of these threads, we're like, oh, wow, I think it could actually be that these parents are then leaving and going and seeking a second opinion to find something that's more cosmetic for their kids. So through a series of things that we looked at, we felt like that was a pretty good assumption there, which is great, because then we can predict forward and go, okay, if we had a cosmetic option, now it's testing that theory. For the next couple of months, let's actually go back and follow up on the patients that we presented to. Let's let the parents know that there's a cosmetic option available. Let's see if we can convert any of those that were unscheduled. And then going forward, we're presenting that cosmetic option to every patient that needs a stainless steel crown. And let's see. So a couple months from now, we're going to have a whole new data set to look at. And by the way, that is how I view a good treatment coordinator. to me, it's data. It's rich data that's available there. And are we taking the time to, first of all, go back retrospectively, look, find trends? Are we going forward and testing things like, okay, based on what I looked at, I think this could be something that really helps us. Maybe that's a financial option. I feel like in this particular case, when we looked back, all the big cases didn't move forward and they all said, I really wish I could pay this out. Okay, great. We've now start date June 1st. We have implemented a new payment plan that gives parents or patients the opportunity to pay out monthly. Now, new data set. Fast forward 2 months and we're going to evaluate, did that impact our numbers or not? Okay, well then it may be something else. So let's keep that, and now let's figure out what the next thing is that we're going to add. So we should always be manipulating that. And by the way, once we have quote unquote arrived at our final deduction, right? We need A, B, and C, and then we get our highest treatment acceptance rate. Guess what? Your patient data changes. As you acquire new patients, as your neighborhoods around you acquire new demographics that change, neighborhoods change all the time. That data will become irrelevant if you don't continue to monitor it. So the actual data mining that we do in our own practice never stops. We constantly look back, tweak, new data set, move forward, evaluate again. So it's this constant evaluation.
Well, I can only imagine like the number of variables that could affect all of that, right? Like the neighborhood changing, the company down the street that now used to offer Delta is now offering MetLife. Yep. Your treatment coordinator changed. She was out for 6 weeks for surgery. Or you now have a new assistant, and therefore the parents, it could be endless variables. So it is a constantly changing landscape that we need to be looking at. So my question to you at this point is, when you started, you were saying the quality of a really good TC is somebody who is not satisfied unless. If you have an office of very laid back people that do not have that problem, they're satisfied just kind of going, well, did my best, I'm not going to keep pushing them. What do you do?
So either the doctor becomes the one that's unsatisfied, and in becoming unsatisfied, they are asking the questions. They are pushing. Hey, Sally, let's sit and talk about this case. Why? What are the conversations that you've had with this patient? In the follow-ups, what have been the blah, blah, blah. Let's look at phone calls. I want to hear how you address this patient. So the doctor becomes the one that's unsatisfied, which happens in a lot of offices, to be quite honest, because everybody else is satisfied. And so they have to be the one that's actually pushing. So it's either A, that doctor becomes that person, or you find somebody to bring onto the team that can do it, which, depending upon how big the practice gets, that becomes essential at some point. At some point, that doctor can't be the one that's physically thinking through every single case. So at some point, you're going to have a good treatment coordinator on your team.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.